Let's talk a little rotisserie salary cap draft with Chris Towers. Plus, is Bobby Witt Jr. going to make the Royals roster? Let's talk about it next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5, a podcast that gets you caught up fast on the fantasy news and advice that you need to know. Follow and stream us on Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are found. Today is Wednesday, March 17th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers, and we did a 12-team Roto Salary Cap Draft on our full-length podcast. Chris, do you have any takeaways? What were your overall thoughts with how that went?
It's similar to what we've seen in salary cap drafts all winter and is it spring yet? Spring?
I think so.
The high-end starting pitchers get really inflated, but also, really any starting pitcher inside of the top 30 or 35 is going to get inflated. I think among the top 30 or 35 starting pitchers, Clayton Kershaw might have been the only one who was drafted for, less than $1 more than my auction values have them. So you should expect in a salary cap draft to have to spend up on starting pitcher, even if you are, someone like me who is, not necessarily making starting pitcher as much of a priority as everyone else. If you're going to compete, you need to push a couple of guys up at least.
All three of Jacob deGrom, Garrett Cole, and Shane Bieber went for over $50. Again, this was a 12-team league, and I spent over $35 on each of Luis Castillo and Lucas Giolito. So you got to spend up to get those aces. Chris, finish the sentence for me. Your favorite buy was blank.
I think it was probably Teoscar Hernandez, which is funny because I'm not a huge fan of his. I think, all three of us have him as a bust for the 2021 season, or at least Scott and I do, but he was out there for a long time. He might have been, one of the 190th or 200th players nominated, and I ended up getting him for $6. Even being relatively low, I have him as a $15 player. So I think that was my best value. And, there was a point where him and Lourdes Gurriel were clearly the two best players available, and I would have loved to have gotten both.
Well, Chris, funny you bring up Lourdes Gurriel because I got him for $7. Yeah. So, and that's going to happen when you're doing a salary cap draft, all the inflation up at the top. That means those mid-tier players that are being nominated later on are going to go for way cheaper than they should. So just keep that in mind later on in your salary cap drafts. How about on the other side, Chris, if you can have one player back or your money back for one player that you bid on, which would it be?
There weren't too many that I really regretted. I think Yusei Kikuchi. He is someone I like a lot. I think he was a lot better than his 5+ ERA indicated last year. His FIP was in the 3.3 range. His xFIP was like 3.75. His velocity's still up in the spring. I think he's got great stuff. I spent $5 on him. I have him as a $1 player. I threw him out with a $2 bid, hoping that I could sneak him through about midway through the draft. And a couple of guys bid on him, and this is the psychology part of the draft. I got so frustrated that those bids came in at the last second that I, probably made a bad decision in bidding $5 on Yusei Kikuchi. But, if he's as good as I think he is, it may not matter.
Let's quickly end on a news item. There was a report late on Tuesday night from Royals GM Dayton Moore. He appeared on a SiriusXM fantasy show, and he said that he is, quote, open-minded to prospect Bobby Witt Jr. making the Royals opening day roster. Bobby Witt has been very impressive in spring training thus far and a former second overall pick back in 2019. Chris, how far are we moving Bobby Witt Jr. up the rankings right now?
I think you got to move him into that Jared Kelenic, for me, Joe Adell range. I have both those guys ranked, right around 200th overall. And I think, Bobby Witt might have a better chance of making the opening day roster than either Kelenic or Adell right now. And that's kind of amazing because I think he only has 37 career games as a professional, but he was the number 2 pick in the 2019 draft. He apparently had an awesome season playing at the alternate site last year for the Royals. And, he's been incredible so far in spring training. The OPS, I believe, is over 1,000. He had a 480-foot home run. He had a 12-pitch walk in a recent game. It sounds like he is a preternaturally gifted player with a really advanced approach to the game. Jim Bowden, who does some analysis for CBS Sports HQ, said he's his number 2 prospect in MLB right now, Bobby Witt. So yeah, a lot to like there. And, anytime you've got a prospect of that caliber with a chance to make the opening day roster, I think you got to put him on your draft board.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, your smart speakers, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. This is your audio outlet for fantasy news and advice in just 5 minutes. If you enjoyed the pod, please leave a 5-star review on Apple. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.